Not your form.
Okay.
Your form?
Yeah, we'll call this meeting to order. Roll call. Let's see, where you got the.
Yeah, I gotta sign in, I don't have a pen.
You want me to Vicky,
Here.
John Gabriel, here. Dr. Rodney Rodriguez.
Present.
Julian Romonsky.
Here.
Mayra Hernandez.
Here.
Alma Acevedo.
Present.
Rafael, Joe Maldonado.
Here in spirit.
Well, we still don't know. We're gonna,
Somebody have a.
Rafael Dueñas is absent, and Arturo Dominguez. By the way, they're both he's absent.
In a conference.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. Minutes. Do you all have a copy of the minutes?
Yes.
They were also sent prior to the meeting?
Right. I'll give you some time to review the minutes.
I don't believe the June 6th meeting minutes were sent. Just the 24th meetings were emailed.
I was told they were, but they are included in the folder.
Oh, maybe I didn't.
We
Okay,
have
yes,
the June,
yes, yes.
I have the June 6 minutes here. I copied him, I guess, from, that was our last regular scheduled meeting, correct?
Oh, but I had already seen these before.
What's that?
I had already seen these, the June 6th ones, so,
Okay,
yeah, no, I
see,
just
so
wanted.
those are the minutes, this is a regular scheduled meeting, right? So those are the minutes that we need to approve or amend.
Chair, I did review the minutes and I do need to approve.
Okay, now, Julian, is there a,
I checked it.
everything's
I
good?
didn't- I didn't-
Okay.
yeah.
So there's a motion by Dr. Rodney Rodriguez for the
Second.
approval of the minutes, second by Julian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Very good, motion passes. I guess first item is, I don't know, we want to discuss, I guess, the, on Mr. Joe Maldonado. Mr. Joe Maldonado says that he's missed 2 regularly scheduled meetings. He did miss some special meetings. So the question there is
Oh, there's space.
is he disqualified from being a member?
So I think the ordinance.
Because I know Ms. Acevedo.
I have the
I
same
don't know,
concern.
The same concern.
So the ordinance from last year said it's 3 meetings, excused or unexcused, consecutive or non-consecutive, at least forfeiture. And so I wanted to check because I have the attendance report, and so it does show that there's 3 regular meetings that were missed. One in January.
Who's is that for who? I'm
Me.
sorry.
For Mr. Maldonado.
Were you January, were you out?
Apparently, I was looking at my emails.
Okay.
So it's through January, then there was one in May 2nd, and then there was one in June 6th, which they're all at least listed on the report as regular.
So they were all, so the June. Yeah, the June was a meeting. So, yeah, so I guess we're go by the, I guess if they're regular meetings, then
Yeah.
unfortunately, he is, unfortunately, he's disqualified from being part of the committee.
Committee, I'm sorry for missing 3 meetings.
Yeah, well.
Here is a citizen today. I didn't realize I'd missed
So-
3.
You should see Fred, look at Fred.
I know.
You know, I forgot to take the garbage out. My wife was very upset. She said, I don't listen.
I mean, we would love to have Joel, but I mean, unfortunately. I think he's-
Yeah, I didn't realize I had that January. I looked at my emails and I reported that I had another meeting for work that I couldn't miss.
Okay.
That's the one I didn't know I
So
had.
that's the difference between him and I guess Ms.
I'm glad.
Acevedo.
So, in my case, I noticed on the ordinance when, I think it's Ms. Quintanilla had said that legal said, yes, special meetings do count. According to the definitions, it says, as used in this section, meeting shall mean regularly scheduled meetings and specially called meetings in which one or more action items is to be considered. And considering that the agenda for the specially called meetings of the 17th and 18th of June do not list any action items on the agenda, I was hoping that legally that would be considered not against my absences.
Well, there's that reason, I guess the other reason, which is the one that council had directed us, is on the meeting on June 17th, I believe, when they had their regular meeting. They had a discussion about amending the specific provision to bump from 3 meetings to 4 meetings, to exclude special meetings specifically in the language of the new ordinance, and to then, prohibit reappointment. If you forfeited office, there was no prohibition for you to be reappointed to another committee or the same committee, and so with the new ordinance, it's been increased to 4, special meetings are specifically excluded, and then now you're prohibited, at least for the term of the appointing council member, from being appointed to another city board.
Okay, so it's going from 3 to 4 now?
Yeah.
And it's excluding special council, special meetings.
Special meetings.
Regardless of their action items on the agenda.
Correct.
Is that retroactive?
It's not.
It's
I think
June 17th.
June 17th is, I guess, when they stopped enforcement of the current one, and so.
Well, here's my question, don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah, no, go
does
ahead.
that mean that, because there's no provision keeping, well, let me ask this. I understood you to say that the new ordinance says that you were prohibited from serving on a council during that term of the
Correct.
city council. Does the previous ordinance have that limitation?
It does not.
So theoretically,
I know where you're going with
You can
this.
reappoint.
I could get reappointed.
There's
By
Another
Councilman Bali.
council, by somebody else, or theoretically, what now? You can,
Get reappointed, he's saying.
by the same council person?
Yeah.
Because now there's a new
Okay,
one.
so.
Now there's a new ordinance,
The
but
new
before, when I was
ordinance-
disqualified, the ordinance was
It
not
was
in
different.
effect.
Yeah, and
So,
technically,
I
Yes,
think
I
that
assume.
here is going like,
Okay.
I
Wow.
mean, if Mr. Bali would have me, obviously.
course.
That's a.
yeah, and so
to him.
and so I guess you would have to, this would all have to happen before their next meeting, which is when when they'd have the final reading of the,
One very good
the
point
new ordinance.
that I think I want to be able to bring up to them at the next meeting is for excused absences. Because what if you do have jury duty? That
When
is
we looked at-
a federal requirement or a state requirement that you may have. And so maybe that should be an exception if proof is brought in.
For trial that I
Or
could.
trial.
take a
right,
picture
or
of
trial.
Work.
or a trial.
Well,
But I would-
and I'm sick right now. I've
Appropriate
got a cold, and here I am, I'm spreading, I should not be here.
You know, I mean,
I need days off,
Excuse-
Fred, so get me sick, please.
Medical-
I'll just stay
take a
home.
picture of him, look, this, Mr. Dickey came to the meeting, even though,
Per se.
As long as there's a doctor's excuse, we'll bring that recommendation up.
Or
for
even a certain
other
day's
consideration.
notice. I was notified on Thursday that I had to be here 6 hours Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, those are excluded.
You know, that
yeah,
there should
special
be
meetings
that.
are excluded
Yeah,
now.
well, now they are, but I know you have
Well,
something to
and-
say, but to go back to mine, because I don't know if the ordinance is not official or what that means. So if there was no action item on the agenda for the 17th and 18th, and I was absent the 18th, does that or does that not count for an absence as per the previous
well,
ordinance?
it's irrelevant now, right?
It's, yeah,
Is
it's
it
a
even
moot
though it-
point now.
Okay.
You're still
Yeah,
there.
it's
Well,
a,
It's still in, I mean, if
Yeah.
we.
I thought I
have
wasn't
a quick
official.
question for clarification. When you say 17 and 18th, do you mean the EDAC
The
doing
interviews, yes.
Okay, was that an actual official meeting where was there a
A
quorum?
special
'Cause I
It
know
was a
we-
special.
It was a
meeting.
special meeting, but there doesn't
we had a
say
quorum.
action, and I didn't know,
Okay.
yeah.
I believe that,
I don't remember
if I may,
from that
sure.
meeting. It wasn't
Yes,
recorded.
Yes, of course.
please.
It's on video.
I believe that what all this leads to is just to encourage the members to attend the meetings.
course.
That's what it is.
Well,
Because we don't want to have issues with meeting quorum.
of course.
So I believe that's the goal, right, is to just encourage the committee members to be here for every meeting.
And certainly
Yeah.
I have no issues with that, I'm sure you know. I think this year, my work schedule has just been a lot different than previous years.
Right. Because we all have to make sacrifices to
Of
be here.
course,
also,
I mean,
so.
normally what we do and what Councilman Bali does is when we have the calendar year that we did at the beginning of this year and set up all the dates, I can just give that to my assistant and say, hey, don't schedule me anything out
And
of
that's
town
what
that
I
day.
do, so.
You know, the problem is sometimes courts don't
Yeah.
care about my schedule. They'll set me and I gotta be there.
Or we have crisis that we are responsible for.
True.
We can't.
Um,
I don't have
but I'm
assistance,
just-
but I have to schedule.
And that's why they give you three times to be able to do that in the course of a year. And I don't think we meet 12 months, it's like almost 10 months, right?
Well, no, we have a schedule that we approved back in November, I believe, where we have all 12 months.
Is it consistently the first Thursday, or I need a
It's
copy of
consistently the
that?
first Thursday,
Okay.
like last week was the 4th.
Yes.
So we were not gonna
Yes,
have it on the
yes, of
4th.
course.
So
And then just to kind of, I guess, shed light into how some things work that maybe is different for each person based on whoever the experience is. When I was appointed, there was a meeting that week, and I received a call about an hour and a half prior to the meeting saying, oh, hey, we saw that you were sworn in and everything else, there's a meeting today, but we understand, which I don't remember who called me, but it was, we understand with such short notice if you're not gonna be able to attend. And I said, oh, no, I'll attend, let me grab something to eat and I'll head over, and they said lunch is
you were
fine.
there
I'll head
when?
over.
You were, when
My
were you
first meeting was
appointed?
in April.
Yeah, I mean,
And so-
unfortunately, we already had the scheduled meeting,
Yes,
so it just.
But I'm just saying that that could very easily counted for my first absence because I was given an hour and a half notice
Yeah.
of that. You know, so that could have been, you know, and so
already-
the day I was sworn
already-
in, nobody mentioned it, and then and then I got the call the day of. So that could have very easily been my first absence, and that would have put me on started on the wrong foot. So I think, and then he did mention that some committees don't even meet
Right, and I think that's
throughout the
where,
time, and so.
No,
and rightfully so, you know, the city is strict as far as attendance because
Oh, yeah.
and the good thing, we have a great problem that we all want to be very active in the committee, you know. Look at Mr. Dickey.
Yeah.
None of
just-
us would have come here the way Mr. Dickey is.
I had eye surgery
Oh.
for my eyelids on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. I hope you're okay.
Tuesday.
You know what? I've got.
His wife doesn't think so, but
I'm at the back end of a cold.
Uh-huh.
My head is clear, but I've been coughing and coughing, and it doesn't let me sleep, and I'm
well,
sleep deprived.
if he already in it, and if he can go if he's sick.
No, I wanna be here as long as I
He's
So
can.
just to
been
kinda-
counted as
just to
present.
kinda-
He's been counted as present.
Wrap a bow around this, I guess. I don't, I mean, I guess I've got the 3 absences based on my work schedule, and I know I'm disqualified. We've talked about the difference between the old ordinance and the new ordinance that I will discuss with Mr. Valley. The only thing I would recommend, and I had this recommendation at the meeting we went to with the other committee, the TERS committee, about allowing members to attend by phone. I certainly don't want it to be a habit, but if it's something that can't be avoided, like if I'm out of town for trial, I mean, I have a lunch hour, I can attend by phone, but,
And we've asked that question already, and the answer is no, you have to be physically present.
okay,
Yes.
well, all right.
How about spiritually?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I was in this committee and I was taken off because I was absent 2 regular meetings and 1 special meeting. I know that before, we did not have the schedule of the meetings. They were called on
That was when, this year or last year?
last year, when we didn't have the scheduled meetings. Now, this year, we started with the regular scheduled meetings, but last year, we did not have the meetings dates, so they would just announce it, and sometimes I would say, yes, I will attend, and then they would say, oh, we don't have quorum, so can we meet next week? And so that's why I was absent, 2 are regular meetings and 1 special meeting, and so I was taken off.
But the special meeting, I guess before, that was the old ordinance.
Therefore,
The
it was
special.
still.
See.
And
And then I was
don't
trying to be
recall the special
appointed, I was appointed again by the same council person, and they said that I could not be in it.
Who said?
Well, because that was the original
Oh, I
ordinance,
get
right? That's what you were stating?
No, the
No,
new
that's not
ordinance
right.
says you cannot
Yeah.
reappoint.
Oh,
I thought the ordinance was you were banned for 5 years or something like that.
well, I'd have to check if there's anything that applies specifically to this committee that, why you were told that.
Yeah, so, I didn't understand, but,
Because the new ordinance is supposed to apply to all across the board unless they have something in their specific ordinance that contradicts, and so we have a lot of committees and they all have their own.
There's 25 to 30
Yeah.
committees?
Well, since we're talking about this, if I may, I know more than one person here has my cell phone number, and I would appreciate in the event, well, I believe if I'm allowed to be absent one more time, I would appreciate it if, you guys are making a special meeting in the case of the interview days. I'm just a call or a text away, and you
Yeah,
guys,
text and an email, I think we've also emailed.
I did not receive anything until the official agenda and the calendar invite on, I believe it was June 13th, that we had these scheduled. And there were no minutes because of the ransomware attack. So nobody on the June 6th, when you guys were discussing the meeting dates, I believe you were not here either, nobody reached out to me. After the meeting ended on June 6th, nobody reached out to me. It wasn't until it was publicized on June 13th that I was found out, and then when you reached out and said, well, hey, I've got things going on, and I had just gotten back from 10 days.
Did you reach out to any of us to ask?
No, because how would I know you guys are going to be setting a special meeting? It's just.
But you were
whatever's-
here.
It was a general meeting. It was, well, no, the meeting that we
No,
set
I'm
all the
talking
things
about the
was not-
monthly meeting. I had already been planned since January to be out of town, June 3rd through 13th. And so on June,
But the 6th, it was, you had, I mean,
It was a normal
schedule.
meeting.
I'm asking as a common courtesy that people reach out to each other if they're going to create a specially called meeting, just a quick text to say, hey, we're.
No, and.
Or after, but if that's too much to ask
No,
for,
it
it's
is not.
just
We will,
common
we will. I
consideration.
mean, we wanna,
To be honest, I thought staff does those things.
I would think so too. Yeah, no, I think so too. Hey,
That's,
I mean, we all have busy
I mean-
schedules.
I don't think anyone assumed don't
no,
tell.
I'm not saying I'm any more busy or less busy or any more important or any less important.
I'll admit it.
That's the last thing I'm saying is that I'm anything above or below anybody else here.
No.
It's just an easy to reach out, and maybe this is the difference between them learning government ways, but from being a nonprofit organization board, that's just how we treat each other. So,
We can definitely
Yeah.
forward to your liaison.
yes, thank you. It's
Can we
just-
do, because to me, that's something that staff should be
Yeah, it should be
doing,
reaching out.
because it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm making a lot of eye contact, just so you know, I only do the minutes and I send
No,
them.
we're not looking at you, we're not blaming.
I'm happy to forward the rest of July.
Right.
Yeah, you have the notepad, that's why we're talking.
Again, I'm blaming her.
No, and it's just a heads up before the 13th that I had to be on, to come in from a flight Thursday night to see that I had to be here Monday was just difficult. But I made it Monday, I just didn't make it Tuesday. Obviously, that doesn't affect my presence here on the committee, my appointment. It's just something I ask moving forward.
and
and I would-
honestly, I guess we had set those interviews like a week before, right?
They were
on the-
set on the
on the-
June 6th meeting, I watched the video.
On the June
And I believe
6th,
it's
so
in the
then on the
minutes.
13th and the 14th, I believe,
The
that
third-
Monday and.
The 13th, the minutes, the invitation was sent out, and I was catching up on emails on the 14th. That's when I saw that these packets were available for pickup. So I did not get my packet. I didn't know that we were allowed to discuss the interview questions or I didn't know what to expect when I came in on Monday. Because I wasn't caught up, which is my own personal fault, nobody else's. But I just asking as a common courtesy, or if we can make it
We will
something
do it,
official.
we will try and make,
But yes.
and we appreciate you bringing that up, so we will make a more concerted effort to have better communication. Now, we rarely have these special meetings, it was just, I mean, with the interviews, probably could have been handled better, but it's
It's a
live
learning
and learn.
experience, that's
It's
why
a
we're
learning
discussing it.
experience. So we will try to do a much better job, and of course, we value you being part of this
Thank you, I
committee
appreciate
and
that.
in your input.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right.
Is there anything else on the,
Just a weird question,
Attendance.
because I remember this vaguely, and I could be wrong. Does our calendar year start in January? I had some weird thought that it didn't start in January.
yeah, January,
Okay.
the calendar year starts, the attendance resets in January.
Okay.
Okay, so is there anything else on that, on
Just a
the,
bit.
I guess, the attendance issue?
Under public comment?
That's, thank you.
I'm sorry?
Public comment.
It's under
Oh,
public
yeah.
comment.
Okay, so it's on the
I'm
public.
gonna have to miss next month anyway.
And thank you, Ramirez, for coming to our meeting.
Wait, there goes your one.
So the first item on,
Gotta be in
the
Houston.
next item on the agenda is a presentation from city staff regarding the hiring of the economic development director for the city of Laredo with possible action.
Mr. Chairman, Rosario Cabello for the record, co-interim city manager. So after your two finalists, Mr. Robert Eads and myself met with each candidate individually last week, I believe it was Thursday. We had a little bit over an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes with each candidate. on a one-to-one, very informal, no questions, just let's get to know the candidate and ensure that we all would get to know each other and be able to work with each other. Then thereafter, that same day, we had a meet and greet, and we invited various members of council, not having a quorum, and we invited the economic, LEDC to be there. So in their attendance there was Olivia Varela, and also Mr. Tony Arce was there. In addition to the mayor, Councilwoman Vielma, and Councilmember Alfield were there. There was others that were also invited, however, there was a lot of things going on that evening. So we met for a meet and greet, very informal also, or we thought it was gonna be informal, but council was very prepared, and so was the mayor. And they asked them specific questions about Laredo and about their philosophy and economic development. And so there was very good dialogue. At the end of the evening, council members that were there, along with the mayor, both knew it's a very difficult decision to make, because both candidates have a lot to offer, very, very different candidates, and they both have quite a lot of, one has the education, one has the experience, and so we're all having a hard time even after talking to council. On our personal interview, we were very impressed with both candidates. There was one or two questions on one of the candidates that I'm still churning in my head as far as the question that I asked, do you want to move to Laredo? Do you really want to move to Laredo? And so it was not a convincing yes. And so therefore, I know that that is still churning in my personal being, and I don't want to disclose which one of the candidates was publicly. However, that is, yes, sir, you have a question?
That's a great question you asked. Number two, most people in the valley don't want to leave the valley.
Correct.
Most people anywhere else, because we've got such a so-called low quality of life. There's plenty, I love it here, I'm sorry, I was born and raised here.
Yes, me too.
And I want my kids, my grandkids to go up here, so I just want to make this a better place. But I owned a business in the valley, and I used to go back and forth. People in the valley, I've hired lots of people, professional people in my profession. And people in the valley, I pay more than anybody in the state of Texas with benefits. And they won't even come here for that.
Because it's Laredo, or they think it's bad, but it's not. It's a wonderful place to live. So what we're doing right now is we have a background check on both individuals to ensure that they do get cleared. There is a concern with one of the candidates as far as a disclosure that was made. And so we're ensuring to follow that due diligence. That's almost done. Once we get back the reference checks, we will be ready to make that decision, hopefully by mid next week. Mr. Eads is out on Monday and Tuesday of next week, but hopefully we'll have everything done and be able to make that firm offer.
Is that disclosure issue the same candidate that seems uncertain about moving to Laredo?
No, it's a different one.
Oh, great.
It's a different one.
So you have one and one kind of.
And so I'm hoping that things will work out. They're both very good candidates. I mean, we like both of them very much. They both have the experience, different type of work that they've done, but they both bring a lot to the table.
I think Dr. Rodriguez said after our meeting that education doesn't always apply. You can be the most educated, but to apply it is a whole different thing. And I love both candidates.
Yes, it's a difficult decision.
But I guess everybody knows who my favorite one was.
No, I don't. So I came in late to the meeting, the last meeting when the two finalists and discussion was done.
Okay.
But
And he
they're
was
both
here
good
the
candidates.
last meeting.
Okay.
May I ask what the process is, or what part of the process is left at this point? So
Just the reference checks, and that would be
And
it.
the background as well?
The background, the reference checks, well, the reference checks, because the background comes in after the
Oh,
offer's
they
made.
start, okay.
So once the offer's made and they accept, or the negotiation is
Okay.
finalized, then we sent them out for the criminal background check.
It's contingent to the background being clean.
Right,
Is you have the references listed on the applications?
correct.
I have a question in regards to that, or is this discussion time? I know that on one of the finalists, the one who scored the highest, I was able to see the interview even though it wasn't completely finished. And I have a couple things on that, but one of them I noticed that one of the references listed as a subcommittee member.
Mhm.
Is there any conflict of interest in that? And it shows them very recommendable, which is
Yeah.
great, but is there a conflict because the subcommittee member was on the subcommittee that selected them and interviewed them?
Didn't we ask
That's a good
clarification
point.
during?
I have
I went
HR.
ahead and I disclosed, it was me,
Mhm.
and I disclosed that in the inception of the whole process.
With
On the
HR.
with the
With
subcommittee or the?
HR
Oh, okay,
and
great.
the committee as well.
Great, I'm
Yes.
glad to see that, good. And then, the other concern I had was, and I really need clarification, I'm sorry that HR is not here, I'm not sure, because we don't have minutes, like said, but Myra, if you could help me, you arrived late on day one and missed the first interview. You were able to ask a question to the second candidate
That was
on the
your
quality of life, I believe your question was?
correct.
Now, what happened, you said something that you were not cleared to ask that question again? Can you please clarify on that?
I was not able to ask the question to the other candidates because it was not asked to the first candidate.
And who told you that? HR?
HR.
Okay. Now, my concern is that the first, or the only recorded interview on day 2, which I was absent for, I was able to see on the YouTube, within the first half hour, our committee interrupted the interview 5 times with questions.
And is there,
That's a concern. If Myra can't ask her one question, that we're all allowed to ask one question on day 1, how is it that we're able to interrupt the interview process 5 times within the first half hour? I stopped counting, but it happened throughout the whole hour that was recorded.
The clarifications on, we were covering
Regardless,
subjects.
I mean, I could ask clarifications to every candidate if I, 1, wanted to, 2, knew we were allowed to. But if we're talking about Myra not being able to ask her question because the first candidate was not asked,
The questions were regarding the last, there was the first set of questions that was put together by HR, and then there was the second set of questions.
but you guys interrupted HR through their process and asked for further discussion or clarification or more probing questions to one candidate that did not occur on the phone and Skype interviews for the first 3 candidates. And my concern is just consistency. There would be a possibility if any of the day 1 interviews, any one of us might have wanted more clarification and chose not to because I didn't know we could just interrupt and do it. So I would think there was a question, on elaborating on social media or, further things about education and certain things like that. And I just, any one of the interviewed people, any one of the candidates, we could have further probed to have better clarification and better understanding of their qualifications, their intentions, and everything else. We just didn't do that. So I just don't know how Myra's question being asked to the remaining 5 was not acceptable, but us probing into this other candidate, how that doesn't fall under the same consistency issue that
think-
HR had.
I think just my opinion.
Uh-huh.
I believe that the candidate, like the individual, the committee,
Uh-huh.
felt like this candidate maybe, needed some more insight or what have you, because it lent itself
Okay.
to because the individual may have answered, like one candidate may have answered just directly and said, this is what I do and that's it. So it didn't lend itself to the committee to want to ask anything. It's just my opinion. But in another candidate may, you know what, you went there, so now let me ask you this because I want to learn a little more about you or what have you. HR let it happen, so it's just my opinion, if they let it happen, then I would feel that I could do that,
Yeah.
but, legal's here,
And I feel there's questions that were already laid out that are clarified, and then there's new, completely different questions. And I think what we're trying to do, because there was a scoring system, is keep, clarifications are different than new questions. And the questions
Cluster
were for,
analysis question?
the cluster
Your
analysis
cluster analysis
was a
question?
clarification on, and I don't have,
it was one of the questions.
it was regarding one of the questions, what tools have you used?
And you asked if you use specific tools, whereas he didn't answer, I've used this tool, you asked him for a specific tool, you pointed out. So
Regarding the
how is
question.
that clarification when you're he's giving you, it's, if I'm interviewing for a job or something, it's up to me to give the best information I can. And part of the interview process is being on the spot, not knowing the questions that are gonna be asked, and being able to come up with the best answers. So if you were to ask me that question and either I've completely forgot, well, I would have been like, great, oh, you know, actually I have in this case, or no, I haven't in this case. Whatever the answer is, you're helping me in my interview process by asking me more probing questions, in my opinion.
Now, one of the things is that we were guided by the HR department. I mean, is it all gonna be completely equal?
The
It's
first
very,
three were?
very difficult,
The first three.
but in other words, we had questions,
Mm-hmm.
and we were being guided by the HR department, and we used their judgment. If they felt we were out of line, I mean.
Would they say that in front of a candidate though? I don't know.
And if-
Well, I mean.
We
Are they empowered? They as HR staff feel they get challenged,
There was
they
some
can
times
make-
that they would say, that they would try, and if we would veer off, they would get us back in line.
And if I may, and I hope I'm not misstating anything that you're saying, but what I get, the gist of what Alma's saying is that what we're trying to do is have a fair process for
Right.
everyone. And part of that fairness is trying to, and we say this a lot in our legal community, is staying away from the appearance of impropriety.
Right.
Right? And so one of the concerns I think Alma has is that, you know, we have the system in place so that we could stay away from that appearance of impropriety. And, you know, Myra wasn't allowed to ask additional questions because HR decided that she wasn't there for the first one. Maybe it wouldn't be fair to ask the remainder of the people that same question, and maybe I'm repeating stuff.
The only time that was brought up was at the second part when it was our questions that we each had, and we would go in a line. Now you ask the question. Now you ask the question.
Sure, but
that was the
here's-
only time that was brought up.
And while I understand that, you, as someone who wasn't there, as someone who doesn't even know what the questions were, I think you can see from Ms. Acevedo's point is that if a candidate doesn't answer a question appropriately, correctly, fully, and no other candidate was allowed that same opportunity to clarify their answer, it seems like there would be an appearance of impropriety. That's the concern.
And that was not our
And so,
intention.
and I'm not saying there was anything wrong.
Not at all.
Did
At
that
the
have
end of the day, I guess the decision will be co-interim city manager's decision.
Right.
And so we completely appreciate all the comments at this point.
Right.
If there is maybe a candidate that you feel very strongly about other than these two, let's talk about that.
Okay.
And so, because we've done our due diligence, we appreciate those two candidates. These were the top two candidates at that, this is where we are now. The candidates are good candidates. So let's see if there's anyone else or anything else that we may have missed. Let's try to figure out what we can do.
I don't, were you gonna say something?
Are
Can
you
you
good
clarify
with
or
that?
no?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's their decision, you make the recommendation, and ultimately, the idea is for it to be fair, and I guess I wasn't here, I don't know what the process was with HR and the questions and whatnot, but clearly there was an idea to streamline the process so that everybody was on the same page, and so, you know, if there was one question that was allowed or not allowed or different, or what's a clarification, that's kind of at the discretion of the judgment of the people that are organizing it, so long as, you know, the perceived mistake or deviation doesn't change the result or alter it in a material way, because, you know, does that clarification change anything? If it's a harmless error or harmless mistake or a lapse of judgment, if it was, then, you know, there's no point in getting into that if it doesn't change the ultimate result. I think if everybody was kind of trying a good faith effort to follow the process and the guidance of HR, then unless you feel like this one question changes things entirely or was done in bad faith, then there's no, it may not make sense to kind of dwell on the point.
Yeah, I just, I'm not questioning anybody's intention, and I'm not saying whether or not I feel the candidates are great selections or not. That's not what this is about. I just, it's possible that if we had started with the first, second, and third candidates that I was present for, probing questions like that, or interrupting or requesting clarifications, that we might have had a more thorough analysis of their ability to be in this position. And ultimately, I think we're all on the same page, or I could assume, but there's no, I don't want to assume anything because that's never a good thing. But for me, at least, I know my intention, or when I look at this and this responsibility we have, this has been a long, lengthy process for the city, for the citizens, and I know we've kind of been given this and given ourselves a time frame to do it very quickly, and thoroughly is great. And I like that you guys are asking probing questions. I just wish that would have been something from the get. And I think also that there was a disconnect, seeing the dynamic you guys had on the video with, I believe it was Mr. Garcia, and that was available, and versus the lack of dynamic we had with the phone and Skype interviews. Makes a big difference on how you're assessing and judging someone's qualifications and connecting with someone. So I think that
was also
factors.
mentioned in the beginning with the interviews. We would have preferred everyone to be in person,
But they
but the city decided that because of costs associated with them, they would ask them to do Skype.
Now, if there was a candidate that really stood out at that point, if you would have scored them differently, we would have definitely brought them in.
Okay, and that's the thing, that the first three weren't probed. Like, I don't see the thing, there's a couple things. One, Mr. Garcia's interview is cut off, so it's not complete, and so I think we didn't get to your question. We only got through, or we did get through your question before the video is cut off. So we only got 2 of the 8 questions or 7 questions from the committee, so I was unable to see that. And of course, the other 2 interviews from in person that day were not listed. They're not publicized, the video's not available, so I cannot say about any of those candidates. But on the day one, I think that had that been that dynamic on day one, we might have scored them differently. That's all I'm getting at. So, and then there's big gaps between, I think one had 669, and then some of the day ones, I think the lower end were 4 something. So who knows if those would have been closer, if we would have been able to request or continue to interrupt the interview process to ask more questions. I don't know, nobody knows. We don't know unless we did it all over again, and we've already been through it, so we already have opinions formed. I just wanted to note that wasn't the case, and especially with Myra's question. And I think that consistency was stressed on day one, but it seemed to have been let go. And since HR's here, we don't know if HR was okay with the process or HR felt they didn't have the right to question the committee. As staff, I don't know.
I can actually answer that specific statement.
Please do.
We did speak to HR to help us as much as possible, to stop us, to bring us back on track.
When did you
These are
guys do
time
that? Was that
constraints.
Friday before when you guys had the meeting and received these packets? Because there's a lot of talk between you guys and HR. And since you guys were the subcommittee, I don't know when you have these conversations with HR. No?
Not
As a subcommittee?
Not as a
Not
subcommittee.
as a
That was a
subcommittee.
discussion that was had, I would say.
Prior-
It was,
prior to-
no, it was the meeting that we,
And we decided the dates
the
on the
dates.
process.
That's what I would assume, but I do remember having that discussion. I can't quote exactly when, but there was, because I was concerned that if we did start getting into too many questions, that we wouldn't be able to finish the interview process.
Do you guys know how long Mr. Garcia's interview was? Because it got cut off at 51 or 52 minutes on the YouTube.
Not by memory. I don't know.
No?
I don't mean to interrupt, but since I'm just a citizen, I actually have a meeting at 1
Citizen
o'clock back in my
can-
office, so please don't dock my 15 minutes.
Don't forget to vote and recycle. Thank you for
I
being a
do-
good citizen
I do
of
both
Laredo.
those. I do both of those things.
Excellent, excellent.
So, thank you all very much.
Mr. Chair,
I may or may not see you in the near
We'll see you,
future.
that's all.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Bye.
Bye, take care.
Mr. Chair, so is there any other action regarding this item?
Yeah, I don't know, is there anything else on this item? Thank you for bringing it up. I mean, your
I'd like to make
input.
one quick comment.
Yes, sir.
You brought up some very valid points, but you seem to think that we took more time with Teclo Garcia because he had more experience. He's doing it right now. And, there's a difference in somebody who's in academia teaching it than it is somebody who's doing it right now. And the gentleman in academia is very qualified. There's nothing wrong, because he took something and they did something in their town. It was really neat. But that couldn't have been done anywhere else, so.
I believe you're talking to your candidate number 2, your top 2 choices. I have no idea what happened. I've seen this because those are not on YouTube and I wasn't there.
Okay.
So I'm just comparing the day 1 phone and Skype interviews against the one from day 2
Okay.
that I was able to see. That's all. I'm not
Oh,
comparing,
okay.
the other 2 from day 2 in person, I have nothing to say because they're not available for public access.
Oh, really?
They're not available online, so I wasn't able to
Okay.
watch. And the one that, the Teclo Garcia, his was cut off mid-sentence when he was answering one of the questions from the committee. So even then, I didn't get to see his complete interview. Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think there was goodwill in us. I mean, I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
any of them, is it, are we trying to make it as uniform as possible? I think we did it come out that way. And I don't think if you interview 6 people, they're not gonna, is the deviation such that it should have been less? Maybe it's the first time we've done something like that. It's, we want to do the right thing, you know what I mean?
Of course.
And I'd like to just briefly state that I feel very confident from the first round of interviews to the second round, if there was an individual in that first round that really stood out, and
Yeah.
I want to say, staff said that, we can bring them in, I would have easily said it, without a doubt. So I feel confident in the votes, in the points that I cast. I'm very confident that they are true to what my belief was on who was most qualified. So I just like to clarify that, because right now what's being kind of stated is that there's this unknown factor, and I don't feel that at all for my votes cast.
I will say from day 1, one that I would like to have discussed, and I won't ask me to discuss it now because I know there's other agenda items, but I believe it was Kenrick Pierre, the one with the PhD in economic development. He also has, I will make sure I have this right, he
What was the
has
second one?
a master's in agricultural economics, a bachelor's in economics and political science, and his major for PhD. His doctorate is in community and economic development and resource economics and environmental policy, and he's currently working as private sector in the exporting business. Had he been an in-person interview, I believe that we would have had a better idea of his capability. But one thing that stood out, I'm on the TAMU Imagine 2045 committee for community and international engagement, and one of the committee members, she had mentioned something about TAMU having a campus downtown. And one of the points that Mr. Pierre made, one of the answers from the HR was about an experience or something. One of the questions he answered, he had mentioned when he spoke to their university, there was an area that needed, I think it was East Pembroke Pines, let's say, there was an area of town that needed a grocery store, and it was the use of demographics or statistics to be able to execute something, I believe was the question. And he said all the numbers were there, but nobody was willing to put a grocery store in the area. And he said that he was able to convince the university, who was outgrowing their administrative offices, to put their administrative offices in that area. That led to further economic development, including a grocery store. And this was a historically low-income area, underserved community. And it reminded me of the same situation we're facing here in downtown. That's a clear opportunity where probing questions would have gone further for somebody like that, and especially with the amount of experience he had on working both municipal, state, and, county and state economic development committees, or not committees, divisions. I think that if there was an opportunity that worthwhile to interview somebody in person, or do a second interview, or have the city, co-interim city managers have the opportunity to discuss and see what their take on it, I would recommend that candidate, just because a lot of things may have been missed on the Skype call and the connection that he seemed to have, which seemed to be a poor connection. That alone, the fact that that was something that's already being discussed, and that's a need that we have realistically here in the city, to have a grocery store in downtown, and it's underserved part of the city, I think that has merit, and it's worth looking into, especially because this is a very big undertaking that we've all indirectly volunteered for, that the city council assigned to us, because the city's never had this, and we really need to turn over every rock and really make sure we're doing this right. And that is also biased on my end, because I'm not from here. I was raised somewhere else. I was born and raised in San Diego, which is technically a border city. I get involved in a lot of things. I get a lot of feedback from my involvement, my opinions from not being from here, that I do things different. And for the most part, it's generally accepted, but there's a lot of times where it's not accepted. So when you compare that to maybe somebody from the valley, where everybody talks about the same discussions with the city manager's search, is that, well, they know the border, they know the border. For me, in my personal opinion, one of our shortcomings is that we think of ourselves as a border community, when we really need to think of ourselves as an international community. We are, between Nuevo Laredo technically being the largest port in the entire Western Hemisphere.
Miss, I'm sorry, Mom, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's already gonna be 1. If we need to further discuss this, we can set a special meeting to discuss
Well, what I was
this
gonna
item.
suggest is that, Robert and I will take this into consideration, and we'll proceed further with it, so that, I mean, if that's the case, you've done the interviews already, you've done the grading already, so then we'll take it over from here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, report and possible action on the inner city housing incentive policy. Julie?
So that policy was presented to the downtown tax increment reinvestment zone, and the discussion that they had was basically that they are going to be, their current focus is to invest into infrastructure projects. Because of that,
what now?
infrastructure. So street lighting, for example, designated signage, things to make people, give people a path while they browse around the downtown. That is going to be their focus.
That's the funding part that they have. They have what, like 350,000?
Well, they gather around, and this won't be exact, but $240,000 a year.
So they're already in the second year?
They are in the second year, and I'm speaking just from memory, so I may be off on certain things. Currently, their plan is to have a consultant to help them create a reinvestment plan for the TERS zone. In that, because of what our committee presented or showed what we passed, they actually kind of had an enlightenment and agreed that they also need to focus on incentivizing market rate housing and also find out if they can also target student housing, because there's a big need from Laredo College. Because of that discussion, what the TERS is trying to find out if they can do is, because right now the only one participating in the TERS is the city of Laredo.
You're familiar with the TERS on?
I have, well, somewhat, but I have the inner city housing policy. I've reviewed it.
But the TERS, are you familiar with it?
Somewhat, yes. I've read up on it. I've had presentations by TERS members given in meetings I've been at.
I think
Yeah.
all of us have been around, so.
What they're looking at this point is amending their current plan to include housing and to include student housing. And then also what they're trying to figure out to do is see if they can bring Laredo College on board on the whole thing. So with those additional funds, they can focus those funds specifically to student housing, and then possibly doing
For
some.
rental? Like rental or?
Yes.
Rental assistance? Or-
For the students, yes.
Okay.
For specifically students, the funds would have to be only utilized, if Laredo College came in, that budget that gets brought in due to them joining the TERS, it would focus on student housing and the possibility of also, is it Washington Street?
Yeah, so one of the things that we were also talking about, guys, is that as Fort McIntosh is a historic district, we've been here since 1947, even in the 1800s. So all of Washington coming down from the expressway, all of Washington Street to the college, we would love to see that be the Fort McIntosh Historical District going into the college, so that way it attracts tourists, it'll attract people to come visit downtown. And that way also the college is connected to downtown as well. Not that we are, but This way, it'll have some incentive and we can make it a touristy thing where they go learn about the soldiers and Fort McIntosh, our base, and, you know, so we make it into an educational opportunity as well. Entering into the TERS, if Laredo College were considered, it would around be $17 million, I believe. That's what would be
Over
coming
the
in
course
over the course
of-
of 40 years.
30, I think.
30 years?
Yeah, 30.
And so what my recommendation was, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the cause that it would happen or not, but something that would make it more attractive would be to see what the benefits would be to our students, you know, like housing or some transportation.
And like
or-
right now, you've got all the St. Peter's area that essentially is a rail line away from, it's always been, I think the mentality's always been that the tracks are sort of like the border
The
of
vision.
college. So we need to make it, if you could tell, hey, you're gonna have housing for students in the, say in the St. Peter's where it's a
Yeah.
walking distance.
Right.
And then make sure that connects to
And make
the-
it connect, I think, college and.
And the other thing that we've been hearing from our students is the outlets. They like more access to the outlets to be able to go very conveniently. Right now, they're walking, and I know the Bluebird is now, or what is it, that scooter?
Blue
thing?
Duck.
haven't
Yeah.
seen
Blue Duck is happening too, but I think this is a very good opportunity to merge everything together. Downtown, the outlets, the college, you know, and kind of
that
see,
work and play.
right,
All the
how,
entertainment area too.
now with the
We just need a
prospect
grocery store.
of
That's
the
what I was gonna
of
say.
the
You
Ferris
got it.
wheel, you know, that is, you know, it's been targeted.
We're looking
We're
into
very-
a couple
we're
of
interested,
conferences. CBB is actually looking for conferences to be able to see if we can find a smaller type market that would want to come into Laredo.
Okay.
And so we have that planned to be able to go conference because
A
we
variety
reached out to,
of
we reached out to some locals, no, we reached out to the HEBs, no, and so we reached out to Walmart, and Walmart is saying, well, maybe in the future, close to the outlet mall, but that's a very,
That's something to know.
in the future.
When I was in DC, and I mentioned this, I think at the first meeting I attended as a committee member, I was with Arturo Garcia at the Housing and Urban Development, and one of the things that was discussed is the lack of grocery store, and there were some very good ideas, co-op type ideas that came out of that, that I haven't had a chance, I've been able to talk to Arturo a couple times since that DC trip, but I haven't had a chance to do anything with that information, but if that's with CDB, I'll be more than happy to bring whatever resources and notes I have for
That
that
would be
meeting.
great, yes.
Because that's something that I've seen in other parts that I've lived in and things like that, is more, not quite a farmer's market, like all year round, like a mercado, meat market, where you have the produce and things like that, but just a little bit more in the
And we
co-op
just assigned
style.
it because we don't have an economic development director. So as
Yes,
that person
yes.
comes in, is something that they'll,
So just the other thing that I just want to comment is, we've been getting a lot of comments like from out-of-towners that come from Austin, Houston, when they're going and they see the overpass to the college, they don't want to go over because they think it's Mexico.
oh my.
So, so we asked the city to place Laredo College, go ahead and cross over, it's okay, you know.
Not Mexico.
You know?
I just saw a sign on the outlet mall, which was
Yeah.
nice right here.
So what we're proposing as well is that we'd like to have, like, have you seen in Reno, like Little Reno, you know how that.
They have
little-
those in San Diego, Archways almost
You know,
every neighborhood
Archway.
has Little Italy,
Where
Normal
the
Heights, and
overpasses-
since you don't have big rigs going, that's,
Exactly,
I
you
was
know what I
gonna say
mean?
that actually.
And so
That's good.
we were thinking of having two palominos carrying the thing and then the CO of Laredo, welcome to Laredo College kind of thing. So it's a beautification project as well, you know, so,
Tourists can do that.
that's what we're hoping, that would be the third thing. So there's some talks, you know, we haven't been able to commit.
A great, the history is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, Fort McIntosh history.
Yeah.
I mean,
People come, some
Yeah,
brewers
just to-
come just to visit our campus.
Laredo's full of downtown, especially beautiful historic buildings
Oh.
that are just completely
It's
underutilized.
sad.
It is sad. It is, and when you go to see how much they cost and you can't afford them, that's even
Yeah,
more sad.
that's even worse.
That's even more sad. I know.
And
I
to
know.
fix
Like
them up.
there's those TV shows. There's one lady in particular that she goes to Detroit and other cities. And I remember because I've seen her houses in Detroit, and she revamps them as part of her TV show. I don't know. We just can't just reach out to something like that in the
She's a skinny
meantime.
gal.
She's a little blonde girl. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's from like Wisconsin or Minnesota or something. She has that little accent. Yeah, it's really neat. I've seen her houses in horrible parts of Detroit that she's been able to flip and do those things. And we just have to really think, whoever's doing this, if this is our committee tours, whoever it is, or
Yeah.
private, property owners, have to think of those outside of the box solutions and resources that might be overlooked. But, I mean, they're there, we talk about it, we talked about like the Realtors Association, the builders, as in my logistics and manufacturing hat, at the G13 meetings, I mentioned, if we could bring in more manufacturing, imagine if we had a Kohler type, where they're making the faucets, what that would do for the parade of homes, or what that would do, and things like that. And those are the kinds of things that I think of, opportunities that are untraditional for, I guess it could be tied into economic development very easily, but, there's a lot to go
But there's a
on.
lot of opportunity
Right.
downtown.
And
Yeah.
we're working on various things downtown. I'm not sure if this is, it's in preliminary stages. We have the Southern Hotel. I'm not sure that you see the bottom part of it where we have the seniors doing the exercising. Well, the top is ours too. And so we're trying to see, to apply for a Section 108 loan and see who will partner with us to be able to renovate those top floors, making them to homes, apartment homes, not just for affordable housing, but for a mixed residential use.
Mixed income?
Yes, mixed income.
That would be great.
Yes, and we're also looking at a couple of things in the downtown area for the Plaza Theater. Santico came in, they said no, and so we're kind of trying to look for something else, looking for an architect to be able to assist us to see what else we could do that will maybe be something to bring back to the committee.
Sure.
To decide, say, hey, well, maybe something else, because it's too small to be able to do for a movie theater.
I
What
watched
about-
Bambi there when I was a kid.
Yes, it's beautiful, yes.
Let me ask you a question, change. What's the seating capacity?
Oh, gosh.
It's big, it just has one screen.
Yeah.
It's one
Because
screen.
it
and
has
it's
two
just
decks.
The screen is small compared to what we're used to
Yeah.
now. That's the problem.
But the seating capacity?
I don't recall.
Well,
It's,
the Majestic only sits 1,700 people.
Only.
Yeah, but there's not, I think that
There's
one
no
lacks where you
backstage
can, the
as
backstage.
well. There's no backstage.
And so
available.
we're working with the county on a parking, a joint venture parking, to be able to see if we can purchase one small piece of property downstairs and maybe do a multi-level parking area. so
The
that-
HEB
so that
would have been great.
be able to, well, the HEB is purchased by the sheriff's department, so they'll be moving over there. And so, yes,
We're taking this off the tax roll.
I know.
We're taking something, an income producing taxing entity. We probably floated bonds and, okay,
That's
how I say that?
Right.
They don't,
And so
Okay,
Wrong
there's,
taxing
It's
district.
1:00,
Yes,
another
that's-
5 minutes, and so. we
there's a
can
lot of stuff that we're
try
trying
and-
to move forward, but there's a lot of legwork behind the scenes, and then hopefully it'll explode.
I have a question. I thought this was not passed yet. The inner city housing policy, incentive policy.
It was passed out of EDAC as kind of like a wish list, and it got sent to city staff to see if they can find funding sources.
Because I thought my first meeting, we voted on whether to pass it, and it was that there was lack of financing and that it was tabled.
We were waiting for the
absent
4A,
meeting.
4B actually, and we were very hopeful, and as you know, that.
We gonna get it?
No, it failed.
Yeah.
So, it
The
was not
governor
getting,
didn't vote for us, like.
what
He
occurred?
vetoed it.
the governor vetoed it.
why?
Okay, so we were having a very difficult time. We presented it on the House side with Representative Raymond, on the Senate side, Senator Zaffarani. And so it was not moving, so we decided to put it on a rider bill with another city. It passed completely. When it got for the signing by the governor's office, he felt that it was not disclosing appropriately to the citizens of Laredo, that it was misleading and it was kind of hiding the information that should go out for a vote, the 4A, 4B.
Yeah, but from there, would it have gone out for a vote, or that would have
It would have
passed?
gone out for a vote anyway.
Right.
However, the governor did not feel that that was the right process for us. Even though we had gotten, that's the process, we had been advised by the AG's office on how to do it. And so we're trying it in 2 more years.
That's 2 years, man.
I know. So now we don't have, the funding to be able to say, let's attract employment, let's attract education, let's attract, business. Workforce, yes.
So where does that leave this policy as it stands, as I have it
As it
drafted?
stands, it's it's,
So if I can kind of partially answer that from the
Yes.
external source. So this was something that was passed out of EDAC as you know, basically a wish list. The group that put together the Inner City Housing Summit, they have a committee. They've actually kind of taken this and now they're trying to work to find out how we can possibly find some funding sources. That's how the conversation got brought up with the TERS, because part of the boundaries of this proposal are within the TERS boundaries, so they can actually take, and that's what's good, that why we got this out of this committee is they can basically use this as a framework and implement it within their boundaries.
Okay.
And
Okay,
You know,
I had that
speaking
question
about-
when you went to the board, and I was like, well, is it our policy or is it not our policy? And I was really, so thank you for that clarification.
yes, it's our policy as a committee
Yeah.
that got, so now there's other groups that are looking to try to find funding sources.
Is that the
for it.
committee, the TERS committee?
That's the tourist committee, that's how they were brought in, and that's why it was presented to them.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
If I may speak, we just had a presentation from the TERS, and they said that they only had enough
And
money,
I'm sorry, repeat that, who's we? Or-
the Rotary.
Okay,
Yeah, they had a presentation at the Rotary Club, and they said that they had enough money to do, like, first thing, to do a corridor, like, from the outlet all the way, like, to the Plaza Hotel,
To the La Posada.
and do the lighting.
is it to the plaza or to La Posada?
No, there's, up to La Posada,
Okay.
but it's that corridor that they
Right,
want to improve.
Zaragoza, is it Zaragoza?
Yes, the sidewalks
That
and the
walking
lightings,
from
and
La
that's
Posada to the outlets, kind of.
to the outlets, so
Okay,
people can
right.
actually walk from the
Right.
outlets
Right.
to the downtown, and that's where they wanted to implement the money that they have from the TERS.
Right now.
And, yes, and have corridors that they,
Widen the sidewalks, I heard about that.
Well, the
Yes.
thing about TERS is that every year you get a certain amount of money. It's not like for a huge project,
Mhm.
because.
right, so that's why they said
It's
they only
only
had enough
whatever's
money.
available.
Yeah, whatever they had available, that's what they were gonna start, first thing, that would be their corridor that they wanna do first.
I think,
So I don't know if they had enough money to transfer that to the housing.
I think next month, I'd like to recommend it, we can bring in the planning and zoning, of course,
Yeah.
as an agenda item. He would be good to, he's new, I've heard he's
explore.
got some very good ideas, so maybe we could, as an agenda item.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Well, with that, is that it?
That's currently the update, all the way up to Laredo College, that's where we're at right now. I can meet with the Inner City Housing Committee, I think they all meet, and I usually go to find out what's going on. They have a planner that works for them, Juan Mendiva, that's been, you know, an amazing help. So when we get a next update there, then I can do another update here on what's going out external.
And how long of you can give us some report on the G13? It's a very good committee that you're in.
Yes, yes.
So very good. In the essence of time, is there any other comments on the intercity incentive policy?
No, it
If
says
not, do I
possible
hear a
action.
motion? Huh?
Does it say possible action on the agenda? There's nothing to
It's,
take
yeah, it
action
says
on?
possible
Just in
action.
case if someone wanted to take an action on it,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't, unless anyone wants to take action, I move to adjourn.
You move to adjourn,
I
second,
second.
night, all those in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Lupita, for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the input,
Thank you.
everybody.
thank you.
Lupita, which rotary do you meet?
Laredo Gateway,
Is that the Friday?
that's the Mondays at noon.
Oh, okay.
Where do you
Where
do you meet?
We used to meet at the embassy, now we meet at Taco Palenque, no, Palenque Grill, on
I think
Saganado.
I'm working on the 29th.
We
Oh,
can
okay.
get good ideas.
See.
I'm not sure.
And we have really good speakers.
I think we should reach.
What are we gonna talk about?
Good question. I've gone to the Wednesday one.
To the Wednesday at noon at the AMA?
Next month?
Yes, but years ago, it's been a while. It's always, yeah.
And we meet on Monday.